Hi, everyone. It's Lindsey Baker with the Action Hour every Saturday at 10. And today I am here with Jen Rogers of Redbirds Trust. And we are going to get some of the 411 about what's going on. And we want to know, Jen, we're going to get all into your background and your wonderful photography work. And I want to ask you a lot about Redbirds Trust. But the first question that most of us have on our mind is what's going on with the Roundups, particularly with the Onaqui. Please talk a little bit about the state of what the situation is right now.
So with the Onaqui here in Western Utah, we just had a huge roundup of the majority of our herd. 123 of those horses were handpicked for release. So that release happened on the 9th of August. And then Redbirds Trust is working super hard in coordination with volunteers, the Onaqui catalog here in Utah, to try to find adopters and homes, sanctuaries, sponsors for 312 of the Onaqui that remain in the government holding pens right now. So that adoption event is coming up October 12th through the 19th online. So we're trying to help people get tag numbers and match them with horses, for their needs and keep pairs together and moms and foals and bands that are still intact in the holding facility to try to reunite some of those families.
That is amazing what you're doing, because we're going to learn for people that don't know anything about it. Horses, they don't live in a huge, giant herd. They're in different smaller groups, and they have a hierarchy and they have family relationships. We're going to talk about that. But what we just want to show for the people that don't know, they go, okay, they're rounding up the horses because there's too many. And that's the myth. And we're going to get into why that is a myth, the science behind that. And what's the big deal? They're saving the horses. Well, take a look at this video that I found online. It was on YouTube. Ooh, did I lose my video here? Nope. I just moved over one. Okay, here we go.
Stampede. They run horses for miles at a time. They're running them through really jagged and diverse landscapes. Families are separated, foals are left behind. And we believe that it's a really inhumane way to be managing these animals.
Not only are the population limit numbers unfounded, but also the BLM allocates resources unfairly. The BLM manages 245 million acres of public land. Livestock are allowed to graze on 155 million of those acres, but only share 17% of that with wild horses. And to make matters worse, the BLM gives 80% of the forage to livestock, and wild horses are left with the scraps. The roundups are inhumane, and they're also creating a larger problem. The National Academy of Sciences actually found that the BLM's roundups and removals are causing the wild horses left on the range to breed at higher than normal rates. In other words, the BLM is creating the very problem that it's complaining about. The mismanagement doesn't stop there. The wild horses and burros who survive roundups and can't be adopted or auctioned off are sentenced to a lifetime of.
Okay, we're going to get into all of this in detail, but I just wanted people to see how brutal those roundups are, and perhaps you can address exactly what goes on that whole process for people that don't know about it.
There's the BLM contracts with 5 different helicopter pilot companies, and the cost of those is anywhere from $500 to $800 a head for the horses that they push through the chute. And it depends on the size of the roundup. So they will run the horses for miles. It just depends on where the trap site is set up and what the terrain is. Like the Onaqui, when they took our south herd, they gathered them from the base of the mountain and then ran them all the way along the mountain through the HMA and then curled them around to basically the side of a bluff that was where the north herd, because there were 2 north and south herds. We were lucky, if you call it, that there was only one mare that had to be euthanized for a broken leg that she was kicked in the chute. But like in Antelope Canyon, the helicopter actually ran into a mare and knocked her over. And then her foal was trampled and killed in the process. Sandwash had foals abandoned, and there's stories going out with one of the stallions going and gathering the foal and bringing him to his mother in the trap, even though he was caught, and then he jumped out of the trap and got free again. So it's just, it's pretty tremendous to see the bonds that these horses have. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to that are just familiar with domestic horses, they think, oh, horses are amazing. You know, there's these wonderful creatures. I rode this great horse when I was young, but they don't ever get to see them fundamentally natural in forming the bonds and societal structure that they will do as a wild herd. And those bonds are so incredibly, incredibly strong, which is, you know, why advocates fight so hard to keep those families together on the range, and God forbid they're taken, try to reunite them afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, it's super important.
Yeah, and we want to go now fill people in a little bit more about your background. So you're a professional photographer, and you're the owner of Place in Time Photography, which is an LLC. You also are the president and founder of the Redbirds Trust 501c3 nonprofit, and that you founded to help preserve these horses and to help them with the whole process you're just talking about of getting them adopted. So if you would just tell us a little bit about your organization. Do you have horses? Is it a sanctuary situation, or is it a situation where you are documenting and keeping track of them, but they're still either in the BLM's management program or in the wilds? So that was where I was a little confused. Maybe you can.
Yeah. So we're not a sanctuary. So what we are is we are here to preserve the horses. So whether that be on the range, we have a range cleanup that we're doing on October 9th, because there are miles and miles and miles of old ranch line fencing that, you know, the horses are getting caught up. They're getting hung up with their hooves. They're getting cuts in their legs. I've seen foals tangled up in the fences. We need to get that out of there so they can have a healthy life on the range. That's part of it. Part of it is trying to provide access to information and educational resources for people that don't know yet really what's going on with the horses or the roundups, or how they can get involved, or how they can help, or how they can contact their local politicians. And then the other part of it right now that is in full force is trying to assist people with placement of the horses that were removed from the range. So like I'm personally taking 3 horses, and we have a list of lovely sanctuaries and individual adopters that have come forth. So we are trying to help them with ID tags from the pens in Delta and give them information. And then we have sponsors that want to sponsor horses, but they can't take them of their own. So then at that point, after the auction is complete, we will connect the sponsors with either the adopters or the sanctuaries that take those horses, so that it creates essentially a big community, even after these horses have to go through something so horrible as a roundup, you know, and helps sanctuaries get help. It helps advocates to stay involved in the lives of the horses that we all love so much when they were still on the range. So it's kind of a compilation of everything, really.
So people can go to that site that I was just on and get information about the latest information. Is it sort of written like in blog format where you keep people updated? How do people find out what's going on?
I write pretty regularly blogs about the Onaqui that started when the roundup was announced, and it goes through and it breaks down just facts and figures. You know, we try really hard not to be finger pointing, and more of, you know, like from an educational standpoint, like these are the numbers, this is the reality.
It's more productive to cooperate and try to work. And I know that you're trying to work with the BLM a lot. That's a big part of what you're doing. And so you're walking a fine line. You want to tell what is going on truthfully to the public, but sometimes also you need to, perhaps you have to walk that fine line. That's a difficult job. What you're doing is difficult, but we thank you for doing it, for sure. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how you've developed Redbirds Trust, and I'd love to talk about the article too, and the different horses like Gandalf, the old man, and some of that. I think that would really help people to see a bigger picture of how they are related to each other, and how, as you said in the article, we can learn from the horses how to treat each other better, right?
It's true. Yes.
I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah, so Redbirds started when the Roundup was announced. In September of 2019, the Bureau of Land Management removed 243 Onaqui horses from the range. So, no one, including myself, saw another Roundup coming so soon, because they just removed a significant amount of those horses. And of those 243 horses, only 50 got adopted at the event. So that shows the magnitude of the need for people to step forward until we can get these Roundups stopped, to try to look at alternatives. But Redbirds was founded because there was a little yearling colt with a jaw injury, and we didn't know if it was an abscess. We didn't know if it was a tumor. I sent documentation over the months to several. That's Braveheart. We sent documentation.
the right one?
That's Braveheart, a little cutie in the north that was just born this year.
Oh, because his iconic forehead. That's so funny.
Isn't it the cutest? Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and up for adoption. Unfortunately, the little baby's in the pens right now. But so Redbird had a jaw injury, and so I immediately reached out to Bureau of Land Management, saying that I would take him, because the first thing I thought is if he got rounded up, that he would be euthanized. So it kind of just morphed into, we actually need an organization here in Utah to advocate specifically for the Onaqui and try to bring the community together to do that. And, that's how it started, was just trying to save this one little horse.
Wow. And then it ballooned into, let's look at some of the others, and maybe you could just fill us in, because these were all in the article. These two, Strawberry, and go ahead.
Cullen. Yep. Yeah. So Cullen is named after, Cullen is the little colt, and he has one blue eye on his right side. And he was named after a dear friend of mine that I lost a few years ago. And it was just because he's such a beautiful little foal. And the minute I saw him, it's like, takes your breath away, because he has just such a spirit to him. So that's why his name is Cullen. And Strawberry is his dam, his mama. And she, I believe, is 5 or 6, and he is glued to mama's side. So they were always together, and she was a real good mom, taking as good a care as she could of him.
Now, he was Roundup? They were both rounded up?
He is in the pens as well, yeah. And we are still looking for Strawberry, so I need to ID and see if she's in there or not. So we're still finalizing some of the horses that are still there.
I'm not sure if you can give these details, but how do you, when the horses are being held in these pens, are you allowed in to look at them and ID them, or how do you ID them?
That's a really good question. So it varies by the facility. And I've heard absolute horror stories about very specific facilities and walking through piles of feces and hay and urine that you have to stand in, and they monitor how long you're in there. You're only allowed to bring a pencil, and it can only be half a pencil, and you can't have a cell phone. You can't have a camera. Our facility isn't like that. So when I went to Delta, I think all of us, I went with a few girlfriends to ID horses, and I can say that all of us were pretty ill for probably the first hour we were there. But it wasn't.
So Delta is the facility, just so
Delta is the facility. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
But it wasn't because of filthy conditions. It's just, you're not used to seeing a horse in a cage. So that's just hard to get past, to put yourself in a frame of reference where it's like, okay, we have to break this down and look for specific horses so that we can match pictures and those IDs to now that the little tags that they wear around their neck. So that's how you start putting families back together. But the facility itself,
once, if I may, and just explain what that cage, how big is it? How many horses? Can you just describe, because I don't have a visual and I don't think our
No,
viewers.
it's hard. So I can only speak to Delta because I haven't been in the others, and they have
Fair enough.
18 pens in Delta. And I think there would be, so there's 3 rows there. So that would be like 6 pens going down each row. And then they have a run that goes in between some of the pens so that they can let the horses out of the corral so they can at least like run them. It's not run them, but allow them to get out and move around more, which I don't believe most facilities do. That's, I mean, it's a good thing for them being in that, you know.
Yeah. How much, I mean, is it an acre that they run around? Is it a small area?
No,
I mean,
it's very small. It's, I mean, the cages, I'm just going, let's say the cages are kept on maybe an acre and a half. I mean, the pens are probably, let's just say 60 by 60, and they house, let's say 15 to 17 horses per pen. So, I mean, they're not, I've heard of pen being so congested the horses can't even walk or lie down. So that's not the case here. I mean, it's, again, I just, for what it is, they are doing what they can to take care of the
best they
horses
can
compared to other facilities, but it's just hard to go from what we're seeing with them having 200,000 acres to roam to now being split in a cage by gender by age.
So
that's
just to recap for a moment, the way I'm kind of putting this story together from all the different sources is basically what's happening is some force here that's unseen is controlling somehow decisions that are being made about public land, and over time, in order to accommodate cattle ranching and the meat industry, more and more land has been taken away, not only from horses we've discussed, but other species. And they've been narrowed down. And now the punitive means is they're not allowed to go over a certain amount. And if they do, they're heartlessly rounded up. Many are injured, many are killed, families are destroyed. It not only takes away from, not only affects the lives of those that are captured, but totally dismantles the herds, these small groups of horses, not the herds, but the family groups. It totally dismantles it, and yet it's allowed to continue. Now we have to take action, and everyone watching, please, what you can do right now, share out this video. We are going to be giving to you some links to go to take action. We're also giving you links to share. So please do everything you can to help. I know everyone thinks that this is just abominable, and we have to take action now. So let's continue with the story. I'd like to show some more pictures of horses. It's kind of sad when you say, I know some of them, I read the notes, some of them were released back.
Yeah.
We'll go back and forth. We'll just go through what I have. So
yeah.
we talked about Strawberry and Cullen. And now how about, I don't want to say the name. Is this One Ear?
Yeah. Yeah, because he lost his ear in a fight. About 5 years ago. Yeah. So he is a fan favorite. Everyone loves him. He used to have a band, then he lost a band. Then he just got a girlfriend that we call Giraffe because she looks like a little giraffe. And he just doted on her and loved her. And then he lost her. And then the roundup happened. And they both got rounded up. She is currently in holding. He was released back on the range. So he is back to being a bachelor stallion on the range, on the south section of the HMA.
Is there any chance that she would be released, or was he only released because I know that some are being released because of their status or in the herd or their status in the group, right? Or no?
You know, I've heard mixed versions. I know that they did genetic testing on the horses. I don't know that they got results back of that. I don't know where that's at.
Okay, fair enough.
I know that the mares were picked because of how easy they were to dart with PZP, which is slightly aggravating because all of our mares are extremely calm. So that's a bit frustrating that that some mares weren't released that genetically are very sound, that everyone loved, that, you know, were a main fixture in the herd. So that was very sad to see.
So the decisions of which ones to, you don't really know how the decisions are being made of which ones to release, or you do, or you can't comment.
There were several different people involved in the selections, but I know that folks that are going out and administering the darts definitely had, it sounds like, a strong say for who was released for the fertility control.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. We have Stargazer. What a great name.
Stargazer. So Stargazer, he took claim to a beautiful little lady named Nora who was injured, and he stayed with her and stayed with her and stayed with her. And they were a darling little twosome. They never had any foals. In fact, I don't think anyone's ever even saw him trying to breed. He just took care of his little girl. His brother Moondrinker and his whole band are still out on the range, and they look very similar. They're both stunning. So Stargazer is still in the pens at BLM, as is his little gal Nora. We do have a very secure placement for both of them, so they will be adopted together and reunited.
Oh, that's really good news. I do want to tell people that all of the photos we're looking at were taken by you, and and you have an organization where people can go. It's called Wild Horse Photo Safari, and I am really, really interested in this too. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I'm so in love with your pictures. I'm definitely going to purchase one. That's the truth, folks. And I just want to say that these photos are so touching, and they really tell the story. I mean, when you're explaining about the animals, it's really hard not to have, you know, an emotional reaction to this, and to know what horrors we're doing to them for no reason. Why are we disturbing their lives? Leave them alone. They don't have much, you know, I mean.
I know.
Oh gosh. But anyway, at least this is a good start to getting the situation turned around. And the one positive thing that I've heard throughout, and everyone agrees on, a lot of people care about that. The public outcry has been amazing about this. So, but we just have to keep the pressure on.
You know, in reality, the things that people can be asking for, because a lot of us, Animal Wellness Action, the Cloud Foundation, there were so many advocates involved in advocacy groups trying to sort out, okay, if we're going to make specific asks, what can we have people asking for? Because otherwise you just get so many different fractions that it's hard. Everyone's going to their politicians, but unless you're asking for the same thing and for a reasonable ask, right? It's just,
that makes sense.
It's hard to put it together. So, you know, when we go back and look at the original law, the 1971 Wild Horse and Burro Act, BLM is basically operating within confines of the law, right? So there we have a problem. So if there were amendments, for example, made to this law stating that there needs to be equal, it's a multi-use land, BLM, right? It always will be. However, if there's equal allocation given for wild horses and other wild animals compared to, let's say, the ranchers, we would all love for cattle and sheep to be gone forever. But at the minimal, if the law was changed to allow for equal forage, that just gave the wild horses like 35 to 45 additional % of all these hundreds of thousands of acres, right? So even just by advocating for hay, because going in and saying we don't want any livestock at all, listen, I'm 100% for it too. Are we going to win that one? I don't know, but it is possible to win, to allow that they at least be allowed equal forage. And that there be, I know a lot of people are asking for scientific evaluations of each different HMA, which is also called for in the 2013 National Academy of Sciences review.
Right. It's not happened yet, right?
It's not happened. So if we can get scientific evaluation of the herd management area, if we can get equal forage allocation for our wild horses, wild burros, and other wildlife there, I mean, at least that's a start to moving forward and being able to keep these animals on the land.
That sounds very reasonable to me. I'm all for just getting these horses, as many horses saved as possible, and any means possible. We've got to start somewhere. Yes, we all are. But I have spoken to other people with, a little slightly different varying views. We're not going to get into any of that. We're going to move forward and just talking about, what's best, what you feel is best for the horses and what you're doing. And it's amazing work. And we're happy to have you here. I just want to say hi to Tom Vincel, one of our best fans here, shows up every Saturday. And he's saying, we don't need more cattle grazing. Exactly our point, Tom. So is there legislation being initiated, or is that one of the goals of your organization along with these others that you just mentioned? And by the way, if you could, in the comments in our private chat, if you could, if you get a chance to put those in, we'll put them in now. Otherwise, the Cloud Foundation you mentioned, and another one. We're going to show a website too in a minute, but can you mention those?
Yep.
Let's see. I can show one while you're doing that. So what do I have? I have your trust here. While you're doing that, I'll just run through this and show people what's on Redbirds Trust. This is, of course, this is the article. Sorry, a little bit different than what I'm saying. VegX did an article on Redbirds Trust. And this is all, again, Jen's photography, wild horse photo safaris. We'll have her talk about how you can go out and take pictures respectfully and without disturbing the horses, of course. And then these are some of the horses we're looking at.
That's little Redbird and his mother when he was a month old.
Did I skip over something here? Oh, here? Oh, wait a minute.
It's just going through. Yep, that's Redbird looking after one of his little bandmates that was born this year.
Oh, cool. I think we're seeing, there he is. I'm seeing a little different than you are, but I'll just go through these and we're going to go back. The idea was to show people the article, and then I want to show your site as well in just a moment here, but I'll come back over to you right now. Here's Redbirds Trust, of course, is your organization, and people can purchase photos, and this helps sustain you so that you can do the work you're doing. So in a sense, by purchasing photos, or the artwork, I should say, and there's various ways you can get it framed and other versions, I think, prints, etc. You'll explain that. But you're helping the horses as well. Is that true? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that's the goal. When I started taking people out to see the Onaqui horses, I mean, it's for a professional photographer, sure, but I have tons of people that come out with cell phones that's just never seen wild horses before. So the idea of taking people out on tour was introducing them to our horses and, teaching them about the bands and the structures and the individual horses and helping them bond and fall in love with them because they're so magical, so that when the time came that they were potentially going to be Roundup, there would be even more voices that would be able to speak on their behalf. So that's kind of why that all started.
Right. I think what you uploaded was the names, but we'll put the links up later. So we won't worry about that right now. I want to go back and show some more of your photography. But before we do that, maybe it's a good time, because some people don't stay for the whole show, to show how people can take action. One for the Onaqui horses. So I wanted to bring this up. Maybe you can walk us through this page here and tell people how they can help out. And then we'll go to your page as well.
Okay, wonderful. So, one of the ways obviously people can help out is by adopting some of the horses right now they're in holding. We have so many, not only the Onaqui, the Sandwash just lost 600 horses. It's the Antelope, they lost a bunch of horses. Conger, I mean, it goes on and on. So, adoption, if people have a room, is critical. Angler Canyon Ranch is part of the Serengeti Foundation, and they're a pretty phenomenal foundation that allows the horses to roam wild and free on their property. And they're in Colorado. Angler Canyon Ranch has stepped up and said that they're going to take 25 of the Onaqui wild horses so that we can keep bonded pairs and bands together in a wild herd, essentially. So we're working with them on that. It's so good. And then we will be putting out a list of sanctuaries that adopt the Onaqui horses so people can follow them again and help with those sanctuaries. And then just continuously writing out to our government officials, contacting the Department of Interior, because that's who's in charge of all of this. Deb Haaland, this is her call. President Biden, he could have very easily issued a stay and stopped the sand wash. He could have stopped the Onaqui horses. And that's not happening. So those are all good things that people can stay involved with. Right.
And we will put up links for everything that we're speaking about right now, right after the broadcast. Now, I want to just go to Redbirds Trust and how people can help out with that, with your organization. So let's go over.
So we have a donation button on our link. That's a secure donation portal through PayPal. People can send checks. All the information is there. Of course, it's tax deductible. And then we are also super excited to be doing a range cleanup to go and remove down fencing on October 9th, which is a Saturday. It's a weekend. I have several people who have committed that are flying in from all over the US, from the East Coast, which is really heartwarming. So we'll be out there cleaning up the range and hopefully being able to watch some horses as we do it and give back a little bit and make it a safer place for them to live.
That's amazing. Yeah, I wanted to go through some of the photos now, and you can talk about the different photos and when they were taken and so forth. For those of you that step around, you have a real treat coming right now. These images are just unbelievably breathless and amazing.
So those are two very, very well-known horses. So that's One Ear again on the left, and that is a Bachelor Stallion Maverick. And that was taken this spring. Mavi had just won a girlfriend and her little yearling colt. And One Ear decided that he also thought this little filly was awful pretty. And so round and round and round they went. It was like Clash of the Titans. So it was, sad because I like both of them a lot, but neat pictures.
So then what happens though, like they will just go through this where they fight with each other, bite each other, maybe. I don't know what they do. And then one just goes away and lets the other one be in charge of that mare. Is that how it works? Or?
Ish. Yeah, One Ear followed Mavi around for probably a week. He would just kind of trail him, I always laugh like, it's like if you go to a bar with your wife and there's that guy in the corner that everybody hates that's just kind of like looking at your girl. That's what the Bachelor Stallions do. They just kind of lurk and they follow the families around waiting for an opportunity to see if they can get in the middle of it and get a girl for their own. So it's funny to watch all the different dynamics, but he did finally give up. So Mavi had his girl for a while. Yeah.
Here's the next one.
And those are two of the North Herd stallions. And the same thing. So the gray speckled horse, for those who don't know horse colors, it's called a bay roan. And the other dark bay, the brown horse, was defending his band. And the roan was getting far too close. And so when they stand up like that, really the stallions will only spar for a minute or two. A lot of the times when you see pictures that are posted, it's yearlings that are just playing. And when the yearlings play, they spar and they spar and they chase and they spar. And so you get these phenomenal photos and it's really just two horses having a ball. It's not serious at all.
Wow, you learned so much did you know a lot about horses when you moved from Hawaii to Utah? Did you already know a lot about horses or did you learn all this from taking the pictures?
I learned this, from the Onaqui, just for spending so much time out there with them. Yeah, they're good teachers, those horses.
And there are a lot of people out doing just documentation, not necessarily photography or in business, but just documenting and keeping track. Because I see a lot of Facebook posts. You have a Facebook group too that we should share, right?
Save the Onaqui Wild Horses. is what it
Yeah.
is. Save the Unaki wild horses.
Save the Onaqui wild horses. We'll
Yeah.
put that one too. So yes, folks, if you come back at the top of the post, you'll see all the links that we're mentioning. I will post them and pin them up there to the top. So that's the first thing you'll see. When you share your video out, you can just go see how your share's doing and click all those links. So it's real convenient. I'm asking everyone to please share out. It's amazing what sharing does, and commenting, because of course it brings it up in the searches. And any little clips you make and share out is so helpful. You can do a lot that way, as well as the other methods that were spoken of. And of course, if you can donate, that's amazing. We've got another one here. You want to talk about this picture?
Yep, that is Strawberry again. And you can barely see on the sage bush that is to her right, a little tiny brown horse tail. And that's Cullen. That's her little boy. So that's Strawberry and Cullen again. And it's high on one of the mountains in the north range. And she's kind of a shy girl, Strawberry. So I had come around the top of the mountain, and so that's her. She'd come around from the other side of that pine tree and was checking out, seeing what I was doing while Cullen was eating some dinner.
Oh, wow. Do they get to kind of know you? The ones that you photograph over and over, do they kind of know who you are now?
They do, in fact, it's hard to not get emotional, but I didn't know how it would be when I went to the holding facility, because they've been through so much. It was 6 weeks by the time we could get in. And so you don't know what to expect by these horses that you spent so much time with, and I have horses in there that they will literally follow me from one side of the pens to the other. Like they let you pet them. They're sharing breath with you through the bars. Like we were all in tears. So it's pretty emotional to see these animals. They go through something like that, and then they still trust, right? It's pretty heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. I don't know how these people don't see that. The ones taking care of them. I don't know. I don't want to judge, but I could never do it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it's hard.
I love this picture. I love all of them, but this one really, tell us about this person.
That's Goliath.
Ooh,
so Goliath was a very, very, again, a well-known band stallion from the South. And Goliath, everyone had such a hard time getting photos of him because his mares were just stuck to him like glue. They loved him so much. He's just, his whole band just had this beautiful, calm dynamic, and they were unusually tolerant of people and just beautiful to photograph. And so in the spring, Goliath finally lost his band to two younger stallions who treat the mares beautifully. But Goliath was the only horse to I don't want to say survive because that's the wrong word. He was the only horse to escape the Roundup in the South. So for all these weeks, he was out there completely isolated and by himself out in that range because they took every single other horse from the south part of the HMA. Oh. So that's Goliath.
He's still there by himself?
He has horses back now. They took his son, who is 4. He's also in the holding facility. He was not released. His son guarded his dad with everything he had. He was never more than a few feet away from his father. If anybody tried to challenge Goliath, the son would step up and take in and protect his father. They were constantly together.
Because you guys know so much about these animals and how their interrelationships work, is it not possible for the BLM to make an allowance to get your advice in terms of which ones to possibly some more release so that the herd will survive? And is there any way of that possibly happening, of them allowing some more, or just adopting, letting some get adopted out together, things like that? I mean,
that's what I wish that they would do is they're aware that we have sanctuaries trying to take large number of horses and keep families together, and they are still insisting that those sanctuaries go through the online bidding process like everyone else. And I think that's one of the things that's so frustrating trying to do this, because we don't need a bidding war. We need these horses to be safe. And
that's frightening. That's frightening that it's going to be a bidding war. Please, BLM, please, as a citizen, that I know that I'm representing a lot of other people that have the same viewpoint. Please do not do that, please. I'm about to start crying. This is just
no, I know. We were crying when we found out because it wasn't scheduled to be an online adoption. That was decided after the fact. It was supposed to be an in-person adoption. So, you know, the fact that the excuse that I've been given is, well, people don't want to drive that far to get a horse. Well, as far as I'm concerned, then you don't need a horse. Like, you're going to have to come get it up one way or the other. And if it doesn't matter enough to you to make that trip, you'd rather sit on your couch, then you just don't need a horse. I guess it's that black and white.
We're not a good candidate to adopt if we're going to be responsible about what happens to these horses.
Correct. So, I mean, that's, I guess, the biggest plea now. And I don't think that it's going to be heard, but that would be the biggest plea.
I do want to mention one other thing, and I know that it was mentioned in the article by vegex.com where the New York Times, of course, everyone knows about that article. And actually, in one of my previous broadcasts, we have a photograph of 3 people wearing cowboy garb standing there just like this, but it only has their back. We don't identify them. And they're there. They look like they're having a great, time, like they're picking out a sandwich or something. I mean, it's so.
Was it at the Roundup?
I believe, well, it was in the New York Times. It was in the article, one of the pictures. It's a famous picture. I think I don't know if everyone saw it, but I thought it was one of the pictures. So is that the big worry that, especially you mentioned this bidding war, is that the big worry that people are going to come in? And I understand from what I read, it's alleged, I don't know if it's been proven, but allegedly there are people that will adopt, you can adopt for a certain amount of time and then the government doesn't check up or they don't after that. Yeah. So can you just, if you know exactly how that works, could you just spell it out? Because I didn't do a very good job just then.
Yeah, no, it's the AIP program. And again, a lot of people are challenging the program. So the program, what it does is it gives adopters a $1,000 incentive to adopt the Mustangs. So you're given $500 of that within, I believe, 6 weeks. And then at the end of the first year, when you title the horse, you're given the additional $600. So the issue that happens, and each individual can take 4 horses, right? So you have multiple people potentially from the same family, each taking 4 horses to keep on the property. And then they put them out to pasture for a year. They get $1,000 per horse. And then they sell them to the kill buyers to go into the slaughter pipeline to get paid by the pound.
And this was, I just want to clarify, because I didn't read the article myself, or if I did read it, it was a while ago. This was documented. They did some undercover work to actually follow the process through. The New York Times and did follow this through. So what we're talking about is not hearsay, but it was
it's a legitimate documented problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, so that doesn't mean that people, good faring, well-meaning, wonderful people aren't adopting these horses, and that $1,000 may go to training or, I mean, anything, right? It's just.
Wouldn't a red flag go up when one family comes in and adopts all of them? Where do they put them all? That's a huge responsibility. You know what I'm saying? So there would seem there could be some stop gaps and some.
There's a major lack of oversight. I mean, that's the issue, right?
Yeah, of how it's coming down. Right. And it would be seen like if they could give those thousands of dollars to a sanctuary that would take the whole herd. Wouldn't that solve the problem for everyone? I wonder why they don't do that. Hopefully they'll hear from all of us people speaking and take that into consideration too.
And sanctuaries are masked out too. So that's where ongoing support is so helpful, because if they have ongoing support from people, then it allows them to expand and buy more property and take more horses, right? I mean, until the day we can get it stopped, which is obviously the end goal. But in the interim, we have 50,000 wild horses and burros that need to get out of federal holding facilities.
Right. And if people want to get in touch with you in order to help out, they should go to redbirdstrust.org. There's a link.
Redbirds Trust.org.
redbirdstrust.org. And there's a link to donate there. There's also a link how to get, there's that, we just went through the screen capture of how to get involved. That's all there available for you, and they can get more information to get involved further.
Yeah.
Yes, and of course, by sharing this out, that helps a lot. Well, we covered a lot. I think we have a few more of your amazing photos here we should probably go through. Actually, we've got about 15 minutes, so if there's anything you want to talk about that's really important to get out there, then this is a great time. Otherwise, we'll just go through your wonderful photos and you can fill us in a little more that way, whichever you prefer.
You know, I mean, I guess just the plea, and you said it too, is trying to get people to speak up and speak up with facts. You know, a fact-based argument, which I know all the nonprofits were trying to give percentages and how many wild horses and burros there are versus the cattle ranchers. I mean, right now there's 22 million cattle and sheep across the Western US, you know, which is 265 times the amount of wild horses and burros. So we would just love. I know all the advocates would, for people to continue to write and just present information. And if you need information, you know, contact Wild Horse Education, contact the Cloud Foundation, contact Animal Wellness Action Group. You know, any of us are here to help and try to tell everybody else what we know so that everybody's on the same page. You know, it's super important, and it's going to be a long fight.
That's it. It's going to be a long fight. It's not going to be something that we can do one show on, or we can go to one protest, or we can write one letter. And we've done it. If we care about this issue, and I know it's an American heritage issue, it's our history, it's our background. These beautiful creatures deserve to be here. It's not our right to take away what's their God-given birthright, whether you believe in God, all that is, or whatever, atheist. I think many people will agree with me, not the religious part, but the other part of it. So we have to take action. We can't just sit back. And like, it's nice to feel sentimental and cry, and I've been doing that, but then I just say to myself, you have to be tough. Like, I have to tell you, you know, week after week, seeing so many sad things. Sometimes I'm like ready to go on and go, oh no, not another one. But then, you know, I have to galvanize myself and say, hey, it's not about me. It's about, we've got to get this information out, because it does help. It does make a difference. So if people take action now, it's going to help. So don't get sad about this. Get mad enough to take action.
And action is, there's so many horses we can save right now. And that's what gets me through, is every time I go to those pens, which is all the time, and it's a very long drive. I'm getting very familiar with that country scenery. But dang, you know, every single one of those little guys that I know now is waiting for a home or a sanctuary, or going to Angler Canyon Ranch, where they'll be able to live free and have their family back. It's like,
wow, that is such a
have to fight for every one of those little horses, you know, until we can get it stopped. It's hard.
And it's really important to get the word out, the education out to people that they are families. I don't think people realize that.
No, they don't.
People don't understand. Now, someone like you has the background, but, you know, your information is valid because you're out there documenting, and it's right here, plain black and white, that you're out there seeing what's going on. And I've heard this from everyone I've talked to, how intelligent these animals are, how important their families are to them, and how destructive it is to break up the families.
Truly. And the picture you just showed of the sheep,
that
was actually in, that was in the beginning of May of this year. So it was 2 months after they announced that they were removing 85% of our Onaqui wild horses because of a lack of forage and water. And yet there were approximately 3,000 sheep grazing the range and destroying the vegetation and pulling it up by the roots, when you don't have room for 400 horses, yet you have room for over 3,000 sheep. That's what,
and we know we've shown photos of what it looks like after the sheep have been there. It's just totally destroyed. And we have nothing against sheep.
No,
actually don't
just
think
not
she
on public lands.
We don't need wool. We have synthetic fabrics. We don't need wool. So why don't they go into another business?
It's true.
Sorry. I know that's not as easy said than done, but there are programs to help people transition, and we're actually going to be talking about that next week. Do you want to talk about this photo?
I do. This photo is, it's probably one of my favorite of this stallion. And again, it's a bay roan. He's on the left, and his name is Stetson. And he actually is one of the band stallions that took over Goliath's band. And he's remarkable. And he's fairly young. And what he did was, this whole band of horses was coming in. There was probably about 15, and they came in a stampede, and then they slowed. And Stetson left his family, and this is what happened. He literally went and held off all of those horses that just came in with their band stallion, who's the gray-black in front, and had a face-off until he turned that whole group around, and then he went back to his family.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's so good that we're showing these photos, because I don't think people have any idea of what goes on. That just is amazing. Now, the stallions that get older, like Goliath, and then someone else takes over, another strong stallion takes over. What happens to the Goliaths? Are they treated okay, or hopefully?
Yeah. It's just like the little old man who's in his late 20s that everybody just adores, Gandalf. You know, they hang out and they have their personal space, and then they'll go in and they'll go to water with the rest of the herd, and the other bachelors will come up and they'll rub noses and greet them. And, you know, it's very similar to the social structure of elephants. Very, very, very similar, if people are familiar to that.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
So they keep their little friends. There he is. There's a little man, and that photo was taken a month ago up on top of the mountain, and the rest of the herd was down below. So this is post Roundup, and that little old man climbed all the way up on that hill, and he was just looking down, watching the rest of the herd. So that's what's going on. He's a sweet old boy. And that's him again. That's Gandalf from this May.
The colors in the photos, they look like paint. They're painted. it's amazing.
Yeah.
So
and this is a small band from the South too. And that is the dominant stallion there, the band stallion, over with his head sleeping over his lead mare.
And who's the other one touching the nose on the back?
That is her 2-year-old.
Ah.
Yeah.
So that's his mom.
Yep.
Gosh, that's so incredible. I've never seen horses that close together before. I guess when people go on your wild horse photo safari, that's what they get to see and do. And can you give us, like, how long is safari? If people are from out of town, you want to just talk about that for a few minutes? Because we're getting
they start in Sure. They start and end in the town of Tooele, which is like 25 minutes from the Salt Lake City airport. So it's really easy access. And I have some local hotels that give really, really good discounts on rooms if people are here to see the wild horses with me. So that's lovely. And then it can be anything from a 4-hour tour to 8-hour to some people want to go out sunrise to sunset. And I have little snacks and stools, and we have a picnic out there, and we will learn about the herd and take photos and, you know, all of that it entails. And they're pretty magical. It's not uncommon that people will go out there and be moved to the point that their eyes are, you know, glassy with tears, because the horses are trusting, and, you know, they just go about their business, and they're such good teachers, and there's just so much for us to learn yet from them, you know.
And how many tours do you do a week?
I usually do 2 or 3 a week. I usually do 2 or 3 a week. Yeah, just depending on. Right now, I'm so busy with Redbirds, so yeah.
And the weather must affect it too, right? Do you get snow there?
We do a little bit. The winter is beautiful, though. The snow generally on the range is fairly light, so I still go out in the winter, and then you get the horses with all the white mountains behind them, and they're cuddling and they're all fluffy because they get their winter coat.
Oh.
So yeah, it's cute.
Do horses, this is a question, like horses that are domesticated, they have shelters. How do the horses, are they just out to the elements all the time?
Yeah. Yeah, the wild Mustangs, they're impressive. Their hooves are impeccable condition because that's Mavi again. I love him. Because they're just being broken off in the rocks, and so they're perfectly grounded. And then a lot of times in the winter, or when there's really big storms that come through, you'll see the horses all gathered together, and they'll be like mane to tail and against each other. And then if there's a foal, they'll put the foal in the middle to protect that foal from whether it be the beating sun or the wind. And if the foals lay down to sleep, because horses in the wild will lay down to sleep, so the rest of the bands will form a little circle around, so their shadows are actually covering the little babies while they sleep, or other members of the band, and then they'll trade spots. So it's pretty sweet to see.
Wow.
If you go back to that picture really quickly with the green grass,
this
that
one?
is what the range, yes. So that is what the range looked like 2 weeks after the Roundup, just for perspective.
Oh, wow. That is
so they
horrible.
have plenty of food. Yeah. And those are horses that escaped the Roundup. So you can see their physical condition. The horses weren't starving. They weren't lacking for water. That is a physical condition of every horse that was taken.
So really they were just disturbed, and their lives were shattered for really no purpose to benefit them. So there doesn't appear to be any benefit to what's being done or the horses. No benefit.
Not the horses, no.
Whatsoever. It's pretty clear based on the information provided. So this has to be looked at and changed. Particularly, you said President Biden, we did, but like you said, it's so important for it to be focused, like everyone asking, can you want to just mention that? Because we are just about out of time.
Yeah.
The idea of coming together more and having one goal, so that, talk about that. When you call a congressman, you're asking them to do one thing. Can you talk about that?
We need to ask, yeah, for sure. So super quick, we need to ask for, number one, humane on-range management. That's number one. Number two, we need to ask for thorough assessments of the different HMAs that gives a review to the current appropriate management levels that are designated for each HMA of how many horses that can be there in accordance to the National Academy of Sciences. That's number two. Number three, we need to be asking for a minimum of equal forage allotments for the multi-use that's allowed for each of the different HMAs. So those would be the three big asks right now that would at least give us ground to move forward,
Yes. Yeah. So folks, you've heard what you can do. There's going to be actionable links up, and momentarily, once I get finished with the broadcast, I'll be putting those links out. Please share out your broadcast. That'll be the link for you to go back and click on those actionable items as well. Thank you, Jen, so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you again.
It was great talking to you, and I'd love for you to come back again in the future when you have some more news for us, hopefully excellent news.
Yeah, we can give good updates.
Yeah, good updates. And people can follow you on Instagram as well it's at Wild Horse Photo Safari. That's easy to remember, the Wild Horses, and then Photo Safari on Instagram. And you are posting also on Facebook. You post updates almost every day. Yeah.
I post a ton of updates on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, great. And your Facebook handle, did we mention that?
It's either, I have several. So I have my personal one, which is just Jen Rogers. Then I post on Redbirds Trust.
Redbirds Trust.
And also Wild Horse Photo Safaris. Yeah, but Redbirds Trust will be posting a lot moving forward. So the stories of these horses as we go through this process.
That'll be something for people. Can people go on your site and become follow you, subscribe so you can see? Yeah, so everyone just subscribe. That'll be a big step forward right there in the right direction. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being on. Folks, thank you for watching. Share this out. I'll be sharing out clips of this across my social media, and that's another activism thing you can do. You can share this out across your social media platforms. So thank you again, everyone, and we'll catch you next week.
Lindsay.
Thanks for being on.
Mm-hmm.